Welcome to the Latched On Podcast. The Latched On Podcast is about the outdoors in Appalachia. Everything from hunting, fishing, camping, hiking, bushcraft, and woodsmanship, and digging into the depths of what makes this area of Appalachia so unique as a whole. It's time to strap in for the Latched On Podcast. All right, welcome to the Latched On Podcast with Andrew and Zach. We're going to talk about kayaking, which is actually a big thing that I love to do. Zach loves to do it. We've kayaked a few times together, and we're just going to talk about it. So, first of all, what kind of kayak you use?
I have, oh gosh, I should have looked this up before you asked.
Can't believe it.
I can't say the first kayak I bought, I still own. I bought it when I was like a junior in high school, and this is before Walmart had 50 kayaks out front. Yeah. This is before you had to like
the Sun Dolphins.
Yeah, it was before any, the Sun Dolphins and the all the other ones. It's a Lifetime, and it's only like I want to say it's like an 8-footer. Maybe it's a 6-footer. It's a super short one, but it's really flat.
That blue one you got.
Blue one, yeah. It's you sit on top of it. It's a Lifetime, and I bought it at Kmart for like $133 on sale because nobody would buy them because it was such a
Kmart in business back then.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
I
Kmart was
when Kmart closed.
Yeah, that was like it was a lot. That just shows how long. I mean, that's like a probably coming on 15-year-old kayak.
Yeah.
So
yeah, if you were a junior in high school, I was in college. I was 19.
Yeah.
18, somewhere in that.
Yeah.
And I'm 32 now, so it's 13 years.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. It's still good. I lost the original drain plug, but they sell little cheap ones at Walmart. So I have that one now. It doesn't have it's a set on top of. It doesn't have a backrest or anything. So it's for the young man. It's for the so actually I use it now for the kids because it's a little bit bigger than those little $100 ones you can get for your kids. They're only like 5 feet long.
Right.
But it's great for Parker. He can even paddle it now. My oldest son, I took him out to Wells before I deployed, so it was like 2 years ago, and he could paddle it then. Awesome. Couldn't do it in a river or nothing, but on when we have a lot of reservoirs here, so.
Going back to the last episode about outdoors and camping, when they get old enough, it's a good idea to take them out kayaking because it doesn't take long for them to get the idea of what a kayak is.
Yeah, and it's so cool being on the water and stuff. I did have to tow them a little ways. Yeah, they get tired quick, so don't go too far from the boat launch.
My first experience with kayaking/canoeing is I bought a canoe. I think it was like about the same time you bought your kayak. It was at Dick's Sporting Goods because you couldn't get anything anywhere else. And it was, at the time, I think it was only like a $400 canoe. And they sell the similar model now for like $700 at Dick's. That just shows you how much inflation and material costs and all that stuff's gone up. But I took it out a few times, and then it was too much to take out by myself. Mm-hmm. So I bought a kayak, and I bought a Future Beach Trophy Ridge 126, which coincidentally, that company's no longer in business no more. Mm-hmm. But Dick's sells another kayak that's identical in terms of its design by a different brand. I just don't know who they are.
Oh, okay.
But your new kayak, the kayak you use right now.
Yeah, so it's the Perception Pescador Pro 10.
I was actually looking at Perception. God, they're
a little
pricey, but
they are a little pricey. But what I can say is it is a sweet riding kayak. It tracks super well. We took it on the Pound River. That's when I had it, and it has a, for lack of better terms, bougie seat. Is it set on top of as well? Because I like to set. So if you don't know, I like to sit on top of. I don't do any kind of whitewater stuff. Yeah. And the only thing I will say is I think it's set up to be it's kind of a do-it-all kayak. It's got T-tracks. You can set it up to fish off of. You can set it up just to track rivers. You can track ponds, lakes, whatever. So it's kind of a do-it-all kayak.
On steady water, you can stand up in that thing too, can't you?
No,
you can't.
That's what I was going to tell you. That the only thing is the whole. That's one of the things. So if it tracks really well, it's probably not going to sit up. You probably can't stand up in it. So mine, you definitely can't stand up. It's probably why I flipped over so many times that day.
There was other.
Liquid current or some liquid.
There's other factors.
Yeah, there's other factors
that attributed to that. But that's beside the point.
But mine was like that was only a 10-footer, but I had the long kayak that day, so I was the one hauling the cooler of cold beverages and the speaker.
The refreshments.
Yeah, the refreshments, and I had the speaker, waterproof speaker blaring, some Jimmy Buffett and all that good stuff you like floating the river too. So
yeah.
It was it is a killer kayak. It is a little more expensive. The on Amazon I just seen the same one I have brand new is like $9.19.
That ain't too bad.
So it's underground. They were when I picked that one up. I actually got it secondhand, but it was like in the 750 range, 720 range for that one. They make a 12-foot version, which I was really interested in, but it's for whatever reason on Amazon the other day I seen it was like $2,000, which is crazy because
It is crazy.
it was barely over. It was like 1,200 compared to that one.
For like a 2-foot extension.
Yeah, it was
similar
pretty
kayak.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not talking bad about them, but I wouldn't pay that for that kayak. You can get way more high dollar kayaks for $2,000 than you can that one. But you don't have to spend that much to get into it either. Walmart, the ones at Walmart, a lot of people do some really cool stuff. The ones at
sit
Walmart.
on top of kayaks, I think they're starting to sell Pelicans.
Yeah, they do have Pelicans, I think.
And Pelicans actually, I bought 2 Pelican kayaks for my wife, and I didn't pay for the other one, but it was the same kayak that her sister bought. And those Pelican kayaks are really nice. I mean, when we went kayaking, our buddy Wiggins that was floating with us, he was using that blue kayak.
Yep.
That was a Pelican right there. But I've actually been kind of in the market, sort of like, my kayak, it's a sit-in. It's seen a lot of shit.
Yeah.
Like, it's, I've, like, for the last 3 years, I have kayaked nothing but freaking rivers. And I'm looking at a sit on top of kayak that can still float rivers like around here, no white water shit. But it can still float rivers around here. I can take it to a lake. But the only problem with those sit on top of kayaks, there's nothing wrong with them. They're a lot heavier than my sit-in kayak.
Oh, yeah, probably.
So I've been looking at an Ascend that they sell at Bass Pro.
Yeah.
The Ascend
It's a
T12.
It's a popular brand because Bass Pro's carried them for a long time.
And they're $800, $700.
That's not too
You can
bad.
get them on sale a lot of times for like $600, $700.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a 12-foot kayak, so and it offers a lot of stability.
Yeah, so that's what you do. If you get the longer kayaks, so you're going to have better stability. They're going to track better the longer they are. In my opinion, your rollover factor, like how easy it is and how stable it is going to be how the hull is shaped. So that's the bottom. So like my Pescador is pretty rounded, so it does track pretty well, even though it's a shorter kayak, and that's probably the reason they done it that way. Mm-hmm. But I can't stand up in mine. If you get another one that's a little longer and maybe a flatter hull or a flatter bottom, it's going to stand. Like even my little cheap Kmart one, I can stand on it. Yeah. Now it ain't comfortable to float in for a long period of time, but it's almost perfectly flat, and that's why it was good for the kid.
I think my kayak, it's sit in, but it's like a double V.
Okay.
Bottom hull.
Yeah.
So it's pretty stable, but you can't stand on it obviously.
Yeah.
Sit in. And it's only like a 10-footer anyway. But I think the big thing that you focus on with kayaking is what is good for your budget and what are you trying to do out of it. Are you going to whitewater raft? Are you just wanting the recreation? Are you wanting the hardcore kayak fish and all that stuff? And that's going to be based on what you want to do. I know Field and Stream actually made a kayak a couple of years ago. I can't remember what they called it. I was freaking in love with it because it was like a hybrid sit-in, sit on top of kayak, and it had a lot of storage space. It was a 12-footer.
Yeah.
They stopped making it.
Oh, that stinks.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to look. So Walmart has one, and I cannot remember the name of it. I want to say it's a Kodiak, maybe. It's a kayak. It's their longest one. It's like 11.6 or 12 foot, and they have 2 of them in stock at our local Walmart. And it's under $1,000. Actually, I want to say it's closer to like the $600 range, and you can stand on top of it.
Tell me how crazy it is. Of like 5 years ago, you only got like, I'm not saying like, I don't want to say the cheap knockoff kayaks, but what you would consider the more leisurely recreational kayaks, and now Walmart's selling like kayaks that you would see at like hardcore sporting goods stores.
Yeah.
Like 7 years ago, 10 years ago, kayaking was not as mainstream as it is now.
Yeah,
everybody wants a kayak.
Yep, and a lot of people have them. And that's it is pretty cool that I'm not a huge box store guy, but it is pretty sweet that the Walmart did kind of start. And I guess the injection molding, is that how they make them or something like that? It's
Something like that.
I guess the industry got a little bit to be able to produce them quicker and more readily available. So it put out a lot of affordable options, which was pretty sweet. That a lot of people could get into it and not have to invest a whole lot of money because you just need a decent life jacket, some sort of kayak, and half of them come with paddles. And if you don't, then every Walmart that I've ever been to has kayak paddles in there. And If you go to Bass Pro or somewhere else, a big sporting goods store, yeah, they have the $100, $200 paddles. You don't have to have that.
No,
We
I
floated,
got an Ozark Trail paddle for my kayak.
and they're bomber. If you
Oh, yeah,
can't,
they're good. I think I paid like $15 for it,
yeah,
and
and they put their stuff on sale a lot too in the wintertime.
and it
They're
was OD green paddles,
Yeah.
which matched my OD green kayak.
There you go.
So it was like,
Well, I see. I was between. Remember when we went that trip? I went and bought a new paddle because I needed a longer one.
yeah.
And
Did your paddle break?
yes. So
I couldn't remember.
I was between that Ozark one, which was really strong, and then Walmart had just picked up. It was just a kind of a no name brand, but it was supposed to be. It was like their version of a lightweight one.
Right.
And I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go with that lightweight one. It's long too. It was the first obstacle I guess we had to come through, like the first like little swift water spot
Yeah,
we
I
hit.
can't remember.
And you had to give it a couple good hard paddles to one side or whatever. And I snapped that.
There's a video on YouTube somewhere about it.
I snapped that paddle. And then the rest of the day I was using it like an oar, like you would on a canoe.
I remember that kayaking trip. We started in Pound, and we started at the IGA in Pound. This is before Town of Pound now has put actually a boat launch down that river past the water treatment plant.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, they put a picnic area and a little kayak launch.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I've seen the sign for it. I haven't been down there.
Okay,
but
we'll
I've
have to
seen
go
the
check
sign for it. As soon as May comes around, I may check it out. But like the opening, just let me just tell you this: if you go kayaking down a river, it may be every river. Now, every river that I've been to, I'm just setting this up for you. Something always happens.
Something always goes wrong.
So, well, not necessarily wrong, but something always happens that makes it like the most memorable trip you've ever imagined. This trip had like 7 or 8 of those memorable moments. But I remember the first one. We were kayaking down the river. I was first kayak. Everybody else was behind me, and then just out of nowhere, a big old splash happens like 20 feet in front of my kayak. And I'm like, what in the hell was that? And I see something swimming in the river.
Oh, it was when that squirrel flew out of nowhere.
Yeah, a squirrel out of nowhere.
From like the highest tree that was
Fell
over.
in a river.
It was it was an overhanging tree like over the river.
Belly flopped in the river.
Yep, and it was swimming like.
I was like, what the hell is that? And I was like, it's a squirrel.
You caught that on video too, didn't you?
It's the opening scene of the YouTube video for Pound River.
Yeah.
Like I'll put the link in the description of which YouTube video it was, but it was it's like called Kayaking the Pound River 2020 float or something like that. And it's like right there. It was like the first like 30 minutes of that float and just belly flop.
Yep.
And I'm like, what? You don't see that shit.
No, I'd never seen a squirrel and it was like a good 40 feet. Like it was a big drop.
Swam, crawled up on the bank, and was fine.
Yeah, I'm surprised it didn't knock it out. I mean,
And
it was a
and you
big
can hear
drop.
in the background Skylar horse laugh. And I had like a little soundproof, waterproof case over the camera, so you can barely hear anything on those cameras. Those cameras are meant for highlights; they're not meant for like dialogue or whatever. You can hear him laughing back there, and that's how the trip started.
Yep.
Now there was plenty of other memorable things that happened after that, but when I saw that, I was like, "Yep, it's going to be that kind of trip."
Oh yeah.
So, but like, yeah, there's always something on a river. And you always see things on a river that you necessarily, things that I've noticed when you're kayaking, at least rivers around here, these are not like big rivers. These are not like the Mississippi. These ain't like the Ohio. These ain't like the New River. These are like, honestly, if anyone else saw the rivers that I'm talking about in question, they would say that's just a creek.
Yeah, I mean,
Like,
it's a large creek, but
these are little mountain rivers.
yeah.
Yeah, they feed into bigger rivers, but they're enough to kayak on.
Yep.
And you see things on some of these rivers that you wish you saw when you're out hiking on trails.
Yeah, yeah. It's a whole new way to see the outdoors. It's a pretty sweet way to do it. That was the first big trip I'd taken. I'd taken a lot of. I've been on kayaks, since I was in high school. That was the first like legit river because my kayak was never like that. Little one's not river rated. That's not something I'd want to take on a river. And that was the first like good river trip I'd been on, and it was you see so much cool stuff.
Oh yeah, and like I plan on doing it this year, and hopefully we'll bring you along too. The Crane's Nest River, it starts, floatable area starts right there, nearer to where my hunting property's at. But it's only a 5-mile stretch until you get to where it turns into the river going toward the campground, toward the Flanagan Reservoir. But for 4 of those 5 miles, there's no houses.
Yeah.
There's no roads. There's no nothing.
That's such a cool way.
And it was like that was the first river kayak float I've ever done, and it was. You look at that river, and it's smaller than Pound River. It's like nothing. But something about that, like I did a blog post. There's a blog post on the website. And there's actually a YouTube video about it. It sounds really, what's the word I'm looking for? Really, dramatized when I say this, but it makes you feel like you're going back in time on that river.
Oh, okay.
Because it's so isolated and there's nothing there.
Yeah.
It doesn't make you feel like you're. It feels like you go back in time.
Yeah.
You're on that
Well, I
river.
mean, the East is known to be such settled in. Like, it ain't like the West. We don't have these big, vast, just miles of nothing like the West does. So it's pretty cool getting somewhere in the East and you just kind of disappear.
Honestly, like I thought, like when I was floating down there, just by how the trees are and the river is, I was like, I'm not saying like I'm not going to that mentality of this is what they saw 400 years ago, but I'm like, I'm sure it was a feeling like this, going down a river, like as a European explorer or whatever, and you just see this river that no one else has seen before, and you don't hear none of the sounds of Europe of like hearing sheep on the field going through a river or something. Like you hear nothing but the wilderness.
Yeah.
And no cars, no planes, no nothing. And that was one of those moments that you'll never forget. I'm sure you had a few of those moments when you were on the Pound River with us, because there was stretches of that river
Yeah.
where you never saw nobody, and that was pretty great. But it's definitely a river I want to revisit.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I like the Pound too because we hadn't had a super wet year, but it wasn't a dry year either.
I think we hit it like it was like 2 days after a rainstorm.
Yeah, and it was really cool because the water was clear, and probably 90+% of that river was like 4 feet deep. So
These
it
are
was
not deep rivers that we're talking about.
yeah. And what was cool though is too because some of the rivers around here, if you hit it right smack down in the middle of summer, you're gonna have to drag your boat. You're hiking through the river most of the way.
Unless you're going on a big river, like when I'm talking about Crane's Nest and Pound, the best time to hit some is in May and June.
Yeah, like the late spring, early summer.
Late spring, early summer.
Yeah, and because you don't have to worry about dragging your boat, and not that that's necessarily bad for them. These things are pretty tough. It's just you're there to float, not to drag.
Exactly.
So you don't want to be dragging. I think we had one really deep section we fished for a little while, and it was like anywhere from 8 to 12 feet deep, and it was cool if you wanted to get out and actually swim some.
Yeah,
which I think I ended up doing.
I actually got out and waded and fished while
Yeah.
y'all were fishing the deep hole. I was fishing the outer
Yeah,
sides of it.
I didn't do any good fishing that day. I did lose my kid's Spider-Man fishing pole, but
There you.
that's a little hack too, though. If you're floating one of these small rivers, if you don't lose it like I did and I had to go buy my kid another pole, I took one of these kids, like you can get them at Walmart. They're like $18 Spider-Man, Paw Patrol, Barbie. They have everything you can get. I think they got some plain ones too. You can get it for your kid, but it's a great little pole for a kayak because these rivers are the widest part of this river was like 30 feet. Though, and that's the widest, and that was only in the wide spot.
Yeah, I think in that wide spot that we fished, it was like, and then when I'm talking about a wide spot, this was like a junction. Like it wasn't like a normal stretch wide spot. It was like a part where the river bent and like formed a giant eddy.
Yeah,
And like,
yeah,
I think, and somebody actually lived there too.
yeah. It was cool. It was in somebody's like backyard.
Yeah, so like from his backyard to the other side of the bank may have been 100 feet, but that was like the widest part.
Yeah.
Just because it was an eddy and the way the river
Exactly,
bent,
and that's what the majority of the river was. What 20 feet and under.
20 feet or maybe.
Yeah, so the river itself's not very wide, but what I was saying is it's pretty handy having one of those little youth poles, fishing poles, if you want to take a fishing pole with you, because they don't really get snagged on stuff, and it'll lay down inside your kayak in the hull of your kayak, even if you have a sit inside of one.
Yep.
If you're going through a real thick section because a tree fell over or something, you can snag that little thing in with your legs. Just watch out for that hook, but get it bound up pretty good, and then stick it down your kayak or lay it down next to your leg.
Yeah, here's another thing I'm telling people. If you're kayaking like small rivers like this, I'm not telling you not to. I always take my cheapest rods on a kayak. I think I had a buddy one time. It was his first time kayaking a river. We kayaked actually the Crane's Nest, the last third of it. We kayaked it from Route 83 down to the lake, and he lost like a rod. And he's like, I lost a rod. And I'm like, okay. He's like, no, you don't understand. I lost a rod. I'm like, okay, I get it. You lost a fishing rod. All right, cool, whatever. We'll go to Walmart and buy your replacement. He's like, no, it's a Bass Pro Shop rod that I paid like $150 for. And I'm like, and I looked at him, I'm like, why did you take a $150 rod on a kayak on a river? I mean, like, I'm not dissing it. Like, if you want to take a $150 rod on a river and fish it, that's fine. But these rivers are like
They're tight.
they're
That's
tight.
what I was saying.
You don't
yeah.
need to cast 100 feet.
No, yeah.
Like I'd be all right. Like I said, you can use a kid's rod.
That's what I use. I mean, so I took my fly rod and used it once, and then it almost broke it like 3 times.
Yeah, because it get snag
before
up on trees.
before the end of the trip. 'Cause also, my fly rods. I mean, it's a 9-footer, I think. So because fly rods are longer. Before the end of the trip, I had it taken apart and put it in the hole because a lot of these sit on top of us. They have a hole like a compartment. You can put your rods inside to it. So it was in there before the end of the trip because I almost broke it like 3 times. And then my kid's rod, I lost it in probably the worst whitewater section. There was a couple big boulders there, and it was also later in the day. So I was
Did you lose it during our the first sinking incident when we lost the cooler too, or was that later?
This was a later one.
Okay, I couldn't remember.
The first time I rolled and we lost the cooler to start with was in like a completely calm flat part.
You found a bouncy ball, like a beach ball.
Oh,
It must
yeah.
have washed down the river, and you and Skylar and Eric were all like hitting it.
Oh yeah.
And I was like in the front, I'm like, what the hell are they doing back there? I just hear like laughing and giggling and all that stuff. I'm like, what the fuck are those drunk motherfuckers doing back there?
Yeah, and Andrew's the responsible one. He had his life jacket on the whole time, and I don't think I pulled mine from under my seat.
The last time I floated that river, and Skylar can witness this because me and him did this river the year before we did that river. There was a fallen tree down, and I couldn't stop in time.
So that's the big thing that I will warn people on as a fallen tree, and because it's hard to, like you said, to stop in time before you get decapitated.
They increased the river flow.
Yeah.
This one was like in the water, so
Yep.
like, I couldn't go under it, couldn't go over it, and I hit it, and I flipped.
Yep.
I lost my wedding ring. Luckily, it was only a $30 wedding ring.
Oh, okay.
So, but I flipped, and it wasn't like a 4-foot section of the river. It was like a deep hole.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't touch the bottom when I flipped.
Oh gosh.
So I lost my fishing rod. I kept my bait, my whopper plopper.
Yeah.
It was hooked to the back of my leg. Luckily, the barb didn't go through my skin, but I was able to save it. And I kept my camera gear. That was a good thing. My camera gear was still good. But yeah, that was that like right there, because I didn't know how the river was going to be the next time. I didn't know if the tree got washed down, or if it was still there. It obviously got cut, but as a general practice, I always wear my life jacket on a river because
Not a bad practice.
especially after that.
Yeah, that's a good practice. And that's the thing is like a little safety tip though. If you do come up on something, don't get sideways. If you're sideways in a canoe or kayak, you're going to flip.
And
like
if you do hit sideways, we found out a while back because we were floating the Powell River. I think it was like 2 weeks after we floated the Pound.
Yeah.
And you couldn't make it to that one because you got tied up with some other stuff. Me and Skylar and another guy from work, we floated it, and Skylar, we found a tree identical to that one that I hit.
Yeah.
And he intentionally hit it from the side to try to figure out a way not to flip because we were only like 3 feet of water.
Yeah.
So we know we'd been fine. He found out actually leaning into the tree keeps you from flipping.
Okay.
Instead of leaning away, don't lean away.
Yeah.
Lean into the tree, and you can grab the tree, and you can like lean into it, and you can kind of stabilize yourself with what you need to do until somebody else can help you out, or you can get out of the kayak.
Yeah, there was a few spots that was if one of us could bolt, or what a couple of us done. I remember on that one is if we had a down tree, is we'd hit, the first guy would try to hit the bank and get off the river first, and then he would. You can stand in the water and guide your buddies, and if they can stay riding it, and you can help stand. Sometimes if you stand on those logs, that'll push them underwater, and your guys can get over.
Yeah, I think we came through a mudslide that last stretch of the river because we actually were making really good time, and we just decided to keep on going.
Yeah,
like we met my wife at where thought we were going to end up at, and we realized we had like 7 more hours in the day.
Yeah,
and we're just like, well, shit, it's only like another 5 miles until the end.
Yeah, then it took the whole 7 hours.
And then we got hit by a storm.
Yeah, that was crazy. That too. I lost my umbrella.
Yeah, and then, as soon as I saw those clouds coming over, I looked at Skylar and I'm like, we gotta go. We gotta paddle it. He's like, what about Zach and Eric? And I'm like, they'll be behind us. We'll be all right. And yeah, we hit some. There was like a mudslide, some fallen trees there, and luckily, all 3 of us were able to just scoot right over top of it.
Yeah.
And then Eric apparently left his scupper plug out of the back of his kayak. And
yeah.
He was filling up with water the whole damn time.
Yeah. Yeah. I ended up having to get him his kayak was at my house for like a month after that. I ended up finally going and buying one and putting a scupper plug in it.
I kept on watching the video and I kept on seeing the camera angle and seeing how he was floating on there. I'm like, yeah, he was taking water the whole time. We didn't even notice.
Yep. Back to gear though, and tell you what I want. What I really want is the one I've had my eye on for since I was deployed. It's the Old Town Sportsman. It's like a canoe, but it's like they call it. It's like a canoe kayak
It's like a
hybrid.
single man canoe.
Yeah,
That's
so
what
it's
it
a
is.
single man canoe. It's an Old Town Sportsman Discovery 119 solo canoe. So that's a mouthful. The 119 is it's 11 foot 9 inches, so it's barely just shy of 12 feet, and you set. So it's not a typical canoe where you set up on a seat that's
It's
kind of
got
high
like
up.
a seat
You sit
built
down
into
in
it.
it. Yeah, you sit down inside of it. So you're sitting just above the floor of the canoe instead of sitting up on a elevated seat, because canoes are known to be a little more tippy, right? This one is it's literally a sportsman's canoe, and they've built everything into it if you do anything outdoors. So it's set up for fishing. You can use it for fishing. It's also set up for even duck hunting, because some people duck hunt on them. That's not. I mean, I'm not necessarily into that, but I really like it because it's every review I've seen is good. It's more expensive now. It's $1,250.
Yeah,
So
but you're paying for like a multi-use thing.
it's a very multi-use thing. It's the backside of it.
As soon as you said canoe, single person canoe, like I just thought automatically deer hunting.
Yeah,
You can put a deer in there.
exactly. You can so like the back spot is like you can. They talk about how many decoys, like duck decoys, you can fit in it. It's also for the back is set up to where you can even put a dog. So if you take it duck hunting, you can put your decoys in the front cargo section. You can have your dog in the back and track to where you want to go.
That's pretty nifty.
It's pretty sweet, and my thought was exactly is what we can use around here with all these reservoirs we talked about. Most of them are smack dab in the middle of national forest, and instead of walking 3, 4, 5 miles around a reservoir in the wintertime to get to a good spot to deer hunt that very few people get to, you can take one of these. If you don't want, like, I don't have a boat, I don't, and I would like one eventually, but you got to tag it, you got to, make sure you got insurance on it, you got to have your boating license. There's a lot of stuff that goes into
I did that
it.
with my old canoe. I
Yeah.
put a trolling motor on it and I've registered it.
Yeah, and that's a good option
It's a
too.
nifty little thing to use right now.
Yeah, so that's a. I feel like that's the best way to do it if you're wanting to use it for hunting, like kind of like I want to get into, and that's the main reason last summer or last fall I didn't hunt off my. And when I say hunt off of it, not hunt from it, because in Virginia there's very strict rules about hunting from a boat, and deer hunting's not one of them you can do. What I'm talking about is access.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, I'm not going to beat into this. Hunting public guys, everybody talks about it, is using boats to access stuff that, like I said, you either got to walk a long way to get to or you can't access it otherwise. And mine is just too tippy, and I don't want to roll a.
You don't want to have a whole, 200-pound buck on your kayak and then it tip over.
Well, yeah, that, or even just get wet on the way there, because,
Yeah,
like I said, mine's pretty tippy. And then when you're going to places like this, you're usually not paddling to another boat launch, which is a pretty steady spot to get out. You're on a bank that's 4 feet tall. It's like straight up or whatever. So that's why I was thinking about this canoe, because it's a lot more stable. It's just a larger investment.
See, my buddy Tanner and me, we actually used that canoe for last year's turkey season to access some areas on Pound Reservoir, and it was a very handy thing to have.
Yeah.
And we actually did it once during deer muzzleloader season too. We used the same thing, but the prop on the trolling motor wasn't working right, so we had to paddle everywhere. That sucked.
Yeah, that's another thing is you're facing the other thing of like sweating too bad before you get there, because I have that problem anyway when I walk. And then
That's why I got the trolling motor.
yeah,
Because using almost no physical activity I'm using almost no physical activity to get there, and I can stay cool and I can stay good until I get there.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about sweating on the way out.
yeah,
is
sweat on
what
the
it
way
is.
out's fine. But yeah, that's another cool thing you can use it for in our area. But yeah, kayaks are you can do a lot of fun stuff, and like you said, going back to this episode, taking kids out. Like even my kayak, it's just set up for one person, but I mean, my kid was like 5 or 6 years old, and I put a little foam like sleeping pad, just a closed cell foam pad in the back, and he sat in the cargo area the whole time, and he had a blast.
Oh, I bet he did.
Yeah, and just I can do that with him. My little one, I can put in between my legs and paddle. I took him out when I got back from the deployment, because I got back in the early summer. Me and him actually went out and did some deer scouting on Pound. It was on
So
Pound
like your
Reservoir.
youngest, and like he's just a little bit younger than my oldest. Now, does he have an obsession with trying to get in the water?
He wasn't too bad.
Mine does.
I had his life jacket on the whole time.
Yeah.
He was a little nervous at first because he'd never done it.
Right.
So I just took my time, and then he eventually kind of got woke up and was ready to go. And the thing that little pro tip here. If you do take a kid out, what I did is I got a couple of their like bath toys, and I tie some 550 to them and tie them to the boat. So they can get wet. It doesn't matter if they get wet. Nothing with batteries, obviously.
Right.
And they're going to throw whatever they have overboard. So what I did is I just tied it to a string, and then at some point it gets the fun for them where they just throw it out, and then they pull that string and fish it back.
Right.
And that right there keep them occupied for an hour. Just
Good point.
and it didn't cost me anything. I already have 550 lanyard. You know, you can use a shoelace. I mean,
any general outdoorsman.
yeah.
You don't have 550.
And then just find any, and it don't have to be a bath toy, just a toy that you can tie a string to that's not going to get harmed if you get it wet.
Right.
So any kind of like little toy boat, toy truck, anything that just don't take batteries, and that, and then my fishing net. My middle son, what he loved to do is he said he was fishing the whole time. He thought it was the funnest thing ever. I just had clipped my fishing net to the boat, so it's got like one of those little elastic, curled up cords or whatever. And I clipped it to the boat, and then he would just hold it, and he would act like he was catching fish with it.
Funniest thing is, what if he actually like netted like a big old 17-inch bass?
It wouldn't surprise me. While I was out there, I didn't catch a thing, and then he would. I'm the best fisherman ever because I never catch anything, so I'm not a catcher. I'm just a fisher.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing with hunting. They don't call it hunting. They don't call it killing. They call it hunting.
Yeah.
I'm always hunting for deer. Doesn't mean I'm killing them.
Yeah.
I'm always fishing for fish. Doesn't mean I'm catching them.
Yeah.
You know?
I do a lot of fishing, a whole lot less catching.
I'm actually a better hunter than I am a fisherman, but I enjoy fishing, more because it's less, I guess, time intensive.
Yeah.
Like you can just go out and fish.
Yeah, you can go out fish for an hour on your way home from work.
And then you can and the best thing I like about fishing compared to like hunting is, like 99% of the time I'm catch and release.
Yeah.
So you don't have to do any dirty work.
Well, yeah, you kill a deer and then all the work starts.
Yeah.
No, the work starts.
Hunting and shooting the deer is the easy part.
Yeah, no kidding.
But yeah, I guess we're just looking forward to the kayaking. I didn't hardly kayak any last summer. I guess just where my wife was pregnant with our youngest, and we just didn't have the time.
I did that one trip. Well, I mean, I got back midsummer. You know what I mean? I got back from deployment midsummer. I took my kid out like once, and that was the only time I
took
kayaked.
that one trip with us to Pound, and then just things got busy over the summer, it always does. But I'm going to try to at least get three river trips in this summer. I'd like to.
Yeah.
From May until July or August, because as soon as August kicks in, I'm thinking. I mean, really, as soon as July kicks in, I'm thinking about nothing but hunting.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking about tuning in my bows and all that stuff. So I like to kayak. My kayaking, river kayaking season, of where I'm just devoted to kayaking these rivers. And a big thing of like what we're doing at Appalachian Outdoorsman is, if you actually go to our website, where I actually have this thing where when we kayak these rivers, I wasn't just kayaking to float them and enjoy them. We were actually, I was actually mapping hazards and rapids and fallen trees and shallow points, and I've actually uploaded it on Google Map.
I forgot you did all that.
And I only got 3 rivers on there because it's still an ongoing project. I mean, there's no way I could get every single river around here in a year's time, but right now we got the Crane's Nest, the Pound, and Russell Fork, and we got about a third of the Powell River mapped, but I haven't been back to the Powell since I've last mapped it. And it's really just one of these things of where I love it to be a mobile app, but I'm not that techie. But right now you can go on the website. It sends you a direct link to Google Earth, and you can look at these hazards and read what they are. Like, is it a class 1 rapid? Is it a class 2 rapid? Is it shallow right here? Is it a fallen tree right here? Maybe some interesting landmarks that we may have seen on the way.
Yeah.
But actually, before we close out, I can actually give you all some information because I actually wrote this down on a note a long time ago. On my Google Drive of minimum water levels around at least 3 rivers of where you can float them and not have to worry about dragging for the most part.
Okay.
And you can, there's an app that I have on my phone. You can download it on Google. I don't know if you can download it on Apple. It's called River App, and it shows you water gauges for like selected rivers across the world. But you can pick the rivers that you want to kayak, and you can look at their water gauge levels. But back on the water levels, like the Pound River, the Cold Camp water gauge, which is in the town of Pound, it's that little rickety concrete pillar right on the side of the bank. Apparently, if the gauge is 4.15 feet or higher, the float will be fairly smooth.
Okay.
Hardly any dragging, if any. On the Crane's Nest River, if the Darwin water gauge, which is near to where I went out that first time, is 1 foot or higher. The river is mostly navigable. You should still expect some dragging periodically. If the gauge is 1.6 or higher, you shouldn't have to worry about dragging hardly at all. And on the Powell River, if the Big Stone Gap water gauge is 2.2 feet, water level is the minimum for at least floating around Big Stone to Dryden. After Dryden, the river is pretty much navigable
Okay.
after that. So just keep that in mind, and all that information is on that little link on our website. So it gives you a little bit of idea of kayaking around here and what kind of to look for. And definitely, if you're trying to get into kayaking or want to get into kayaking, there's nothing wrong with going to Walmart, buying a little Sun Dolphin, buying a little Pelican, buying a little cheapo kayak for $100. Go out into a pond, small lake, and just enjoy being out there.
Yeah.
That's all you need. It's a one way to get outside, and in my mentality, it's a one way to get on that water and fish new areas and be in new areas without having to spend $30,000 on a bass boat.
Yeah. No kidding.
Yeah.
That's a cheap bass boat.
That's a cheap. Yeah. Luckily, my bass boat I got was free, but it is like 50 years old.
Yeah.
So, but that's it, guys, for this episode of talking about kayaking, and we'll catch y'all on the next episode. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Latched podcast. We hope you enjoyed listening to it as much as we enjoyed making it. Our episodes come out every 2 weeks, so stay tuned for the next one, and we hope to see you all next time.